You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Supplemental. The Hageman brothers and Ben Hibon.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Norman Lau.
And I am Charlene Schmidt. And just like our flagship Mission Log podcast, usually each week here on Mission Log Prodigy, we discuss every episode of the animated series and discover morals, messages, and meanings. But we already did that. We finished the season. But guess what? We're not done yet. We got more. We have so much more coming right now and in the months ahead. We have a very special surprise for all of you today, and we're going to get to that after the jump. We got to do a little bit of housekeeping first. Remember that this show is produced for YouTube and as a podcast. So if you're watching us, you know what to do. Hit those buttons, subscribe and like and comment and leave us good feedback and send us love letters. Do all the cool things. And if you're just listening to us, that's cool too. Subscribe via podcast.roddenberry.com and you can still send us love letters. We love that.
And without any further ado, let's start the show. Welcome back, everyone, and we have a very special episode for you today. By way of subspace, we are thrilled here at Mission Log Prodigy to welcome back Dan and Kevin Hageman to the show. Hi, Dan. Hi, Kevin.
So glad to
back. Welcome back.
Here. Hey, Norman.
Yeah.
Glad to have you here. And when I talked to the both of you to schedule you for coming back on the show, you texted me back and said, hey, Norm, would it be okay if we invited Ben Hibon to the show? And I said, I guess that would be fine. You know, sure, of course it would be fine. So,
okay.
We're thrilled to have you here. Welcome, Ben.
They allowed me out of the down, the under the stairs room. Yeah.
Awesome. We're gonna send. Ben, get back to work.
We'll slide that 20 to you later. By way of Mission Log Productions.
Yeah.
When the last time Dan and Kevin, you guys were both here, there were a bunch of questions that we asked you, and they almost kind of felt like, just wait, wait until the season is done, wait until the entire storyline's finished. So I'm gonna repeat one of the questions that I asked you, and just to bring up like some facts and figures that maybe the audience may take them by surprise. So it's been 20 episodes. It's been around 440 minutes, or about 7 hours worth of content, for the totality of the season. So when we had you on for the second interview, you said, just wait until we get to the back half of the season, 11 through 20. Then you will really see like the vision of this series. So you've reached that goal. You've all reached that goal. And this question applies to all of you. So reading what you've seen on social media and kind of feeling some of these new audience members saying, I can't believe I slept on this series. I can't believe that I haven't watched it yet. I can't believe how this has won me over. How are you feeling now about the series at this point, knowing that you have reached that back half? You can now say that, we wanted you to wait and see, and we're here. So how do you feel about it now? Like, how do you feel about where you are at this stage with Prodigy?
Well, for me, as a creator, you have to just fall in love with what you're doing. So even before people's reactions, I think Dan and I and Ben included, we're watching this finale and we're watching these episodes and we're like, if no one likes this, I don't know what their problem is, because we love this thing, and that's all you can do. You don't try to chase what other people want. You got to build it yourself and go, I love this and I hope other people love this. And so it's such a relief to see that, because for me, in hindsight, it was always frustrating when our first episodes dropped. And I saw, some people were like, this isn't Star Trek, and I'm like, well, just wait. That's a story. What story? Every story has a beginning and an end, and there's a transformation. And I'm like, yes, it might feel a little more Star Wars than Star Trek, but that's because our characters aren't in Star Trek yet. They're going to get there. And so it's such a relief, and it's such a joy, because for us, it's like, this is so Star Trek. When you watch the last 10 episodes, you're like, yeah, this is a Star Trek series. So it's a joy.
And like in animation, it's like we wrote this before COVID, and so we're sitting on it. I feel like we're sitting on this little pearl, and we're like, oh my God, I can't wait to get to episode 20, because episode 20, we couldn't be more proud. I think the combination of the visuals, the music, the writing, like it all goes together, and it really, like, I keep telling myself, I'm like, it's endings are hard to write. And that was one where I felt like, okay, we did it. I don't know if we'll be able to top ourselves on doing an ending like episode 20.
How did that decision come about, deciding that you were going to blow up the Protostar and hologram Janeway was going to sacrifice herself? Because that was a heart-wrenching moment for all of us.
That was in the pitch. That was before we even, I think that was before we even wrote the pilot. And I remember we were pitching, I remember David Staff, who's like one of the head dudes at CBS. He had this look on his face. He's like, I thought this was supposed to be a kid's show, but he said it with the most like, this is amazing. This is, he was sold in the room, and this is, so yeah, we always kind of knew that. We knew that bittersweet ending of losing hologram Janeway, but having Admiral Janeway just right around the corner waiting for them.
Okay, cool. Good to know.
I think there's also, the COVID made it even harder. I think you're talking about animation taking a long time to bake. But obviously we had, COVID happen, and some production, stages and processes took longer. And so we had to sit on it for longer to really kind of like, get to where we wanted to be with the show and deliver, the quality that we were looking for. And so some of the split and some of those story arcs ended up kind of being split in ways which were not initially intended, right? And knowing where the characters start, to Karen's point, and where we knew where they were going to end, we knew that those arcs were wonderful and really engaging, and at least, subjectively to our eyes, and we couldn't wait to share them. But it just took so much longer to get there, and now being able to appreciate, to have the conversation with everyone who can really appreciate the scale of it all is it's a joy. It really is. It really is fun,
So I had the screeners. I had the screeners for the last 5 episodes, and I DM'd Kevin and Dan on Twitter, and I said, I'm going to do my final 5 reviews so I can start producing the podcast. And then I said, and I'm going to get to Supernova probably tomorrow. And both of you, or one of you, responded, you have to call us immediately when you're done with Supernova. You have to call us immediately. And I said, well, I'll get you guys on the show as soon as I can schedule. And you said, no, you have to call us like immediately after you're done watching that episode. Why did you feel like so strongly about just being able to talk about it in that way? Is it because
I wanted to taste your tears.
That's what it was. Right?
I love fresh tears.
I wanted to hear blubbering. Because Kevin and I, when we watch it, Kevin's probably seen the animatic way more than I have, but like every time we
Ben
watch
even
it,
more than me.
we have the, like, you're every time
choking up
right when she with the ice linear chip at that moment.
That was it.
You're like 10 different ways to cry, and even to the place where Gwen's touching Dallas' hand, I'm just like, oh, everything's the
pinky hug.
The pinky hug.
Now, since we're talking about such like a powerful moment and powerful scenes, I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was talking about Supernova, and she said, I don't understand how the process works, how the written page and working with director can pull so much emotion out of you as an audience member watching it. So hopefully, if you're listening to this, Amy, because Amy Nelson's a friend of mine, and she's a podcaster, and she's just really appreciating this particular episode. Like the pinky scene, like how do those things come about? And she's like, how does it work? How does a director direct? And Ben, this obviously is going to come your way. How does a director direct something that doesn't involve human actors, that doesn't involve like being able to do retakes or being able to say like, no, we're going to move the camera over here. No, I want the camera higher or lower. No, I want the camera pulled in or pulled out or focusing on emotions. How does that work?
This is going to be a Ben question. I just want to tell him that the pinky thing was not in the script, so that I just want to say that.
Yeah, animation and animators world is all about observing. Animators are in general people that are very cute and very incredibly precise about every human detail, every angle of the head, the eyes shifting, the pupils, that all of those things are and obviously animation can go to extreme amount of detail and being incredibly simplified and yet deliver very emotional performances. So it really is it's all about nuances, right, from a performance point of view. Now we obviously work with the beautiful words on the page. The actors do incredible reads for us, and that really kind of guides it guides the pace, it guides the intention of the scenes. And then obviously the directorial work it happens almost in parallel a little bit, because we do work on animatics and shot selections, cameras, pacing, all of that stuff sometime before we do recordings of the actors. And so it's a very you need a lot of imagination when you work in animation. You need a lot of desire of discovery, of sharing your experiences both on screen and in conversations. So you find yourself as a group of humans and find these moments and emotion that resonate subjectively to a group of people. It's never one person, really. It is a beautiful a group effort. But there is a sense of you have to really imagine what you're going to get, because in animation, once you have locked an animatic, which is a very, very basic, rough version of your episode, it is pretty much done. We have very little room to play around, particularly in TV. So we don't have what we call handles, before and after shots. We don't have shots that fall on the editing floor. That doesn't exist. We don't have extra takes that we can go and look for if suddenly the emotion doesn't click. So we have to be very, very precise and very incredibly kind of the intentions have to be very clear from very early on, which I think it's a complete reverse of live action, where live action you're a lot of the time go on set and hey, stuff happens. Doesn't work out. Let's just see what happens in the moment. Animation is not about what happens in the moment. It is a slow baking, process but at the same time, the intention has to be very clear. And I think that's where I've been very lucky to work with, Kevin and Dan, and I think we clicked our intentions are so aligned that we have very little discourse in terms of what we're trying to create. And so what it means that is very early on, we're always all going towards in the same direction. That really, really helps.
That's true.
Experience many different ways. And that has been it feels very natural. And we have the same passion for the subjects, the IP, and a same desire to tell very human, very engaging, very impactful human stories, being small or being big. And I think that's that combination that I think we can see on screen. I hope.
Can I just add, going back to that Pinky scene, right? What Ben does, is Dan and I have a pretty good, high bar of quality and attention to detail. Ben is just boom, the shade on that shadow is a little bit too red. Let's get a little more blue in there. He is I'm like, what does he notice? He just notices so much. But that Pinky moment, you get these levels of good, script pages, and then you get that great delivery from Ella, and Brett in that scene. And Ella's voice is just so textured and gorgeous, and it just is so rich when she delivers it. So it's better than how it is on the page. And then what Ben and the animators and whoever, I don't know who did it, one of our animators or it was Ben's idea, but that little Pinky touch just took that moment and personified it into this nice little detail. And then you have Nami, our composer, who's looking at this beautiful animation. Mm-hmm. And Ben and the artists are all damn, these script pages are great. We're gonna have to really bring it. Well, they're bringing it, And then
You
Nami's
give her a
looking at it
50-piece
going,
orchestra. Yeah. You give her
yeah, Nami's like, oh my God, these visuals are so gorgeous and lush. I have to deliver the music to match that. And so then she's doing it. So you get these layers of artistry. And when it all comes together, oh man, it's just magical.
That's why we tear up so much. It's just such a
I think one of the things that we talked about making Prodigy and making an animated show, initially at the start, at the ideation of the project, I think we really wanted to tell a really big story, but in small moments. At least that was my ambition in terms of the directorial style, if you want, and the hands touch. Things are very human and very simple, and actually very throwaway. But having, seeing these things and seeing characters do these simple things really just put everything back in context. And I think kind of like it is intimate, it is precious, it's for free, but those things, if you don't show them and you don't take the time to stop and see some of these little interaction, then you're losing so much texture to the characters. And I think that's why we certainly have been trying, not artificially doing that, but really kind of finding these scenes and these moments, because 21 and a half minutes is really, really short and very, very tight in terms of kind of like the amount of storytelling we're trying to deliver. So it's kind of like pace-wise, how do we still manage to steal away time for the characters to interact in a very human way? And so this little, looking away for a second or two are really, really important. And we do that with the eyes, with the other faces. We do that as much as we can. We would do more if we could, if we had a little bit more time. But I think it really brings a layer of, hopefully, of sophistication to the storytelling that I hope really elevates, the bigger story, right? Just by having some of those details.
When I mentioned that 440 minutes, I was taking out the opening and closing credits. Those are the 21 and a half minutes of actual story time. So yeah, it's very, very condensed story. So I'm going to admit, since we're talking about that scene, before Shar gets to her next question, the scene that really got me, and then after watching it, I know the scene's coming up, and it's almost even hard to talk about it now. It's when Janeway turns around and she clutches her heart before she turns around the last time to say goodbye. She knows what's going to happen. We know what's going to happen because of that short half of a second movement, right? She's stealing herself. Think about that. A hologram program is stealing herself emotionally to say goodbye. That's incredible, right? That's incredible. And everyone knows it. And then when finally she appears in the shuttle and then Nami's music swells and then everything kind of explodes, that was it. I was done.
Yeah, we were all finished.
Yeah.
Well, before we move on from production stuff, because I love hearing about the processes that go into creating a show that's as intricate as this, because it's countless hours of hard work that everybody puts in, and then it's distilled into this 20-something minute show in its final product. And I've been enjoying this stuff on the Blu-rays, by the way, the bonus stuff about casting the actors and stuff like that. I would love to know, because I'm not a Hollywood person, are there things in these kind of features that always get overlooked? Because you always hear things like the music and the animation and the writers and the directors and whatnot. Anybody in this process who doesn't get the credit they deserve, who are they and why should we know what they do?
All of them.
So many.
Jack Rossi, the LCARs,
Jack Rossi.
Effects, compositing, everything, lighting,
rigging,
the textures, bones into the CG model.
All right, let's give
lighting.
each of us give one specific example.
I started with Jack. I started with Jack and the LCARs.
Explain more. Jack Rossi. Jack Rossi is one of our prop designers.
But we have multiple people that did the UI. We have
It's hard to name.
Our team who does the UI, like in prop design, like there's so much that we look at this stuff and we usually approve it because it's gorgeous and it looks awesome. But now that the shows are out, there's fans who are like catching, oh my gosh, see how they did this? Well, that matches exactly what they did in the TOS episode. I'm like, that is nuts. Like I can't, at such detail that, I give all credit to our entire team who loves and cares for this show. And they're giving that extra 110% to get those details just right. Hats off to them.
Yeah.
For real.
Who else? Jeez Louise, where do you start?
Yeah, I think it's not fair to give names because there's too many people, but even think about the asset management productions, people that are like the backbone of managing the volume that is actually created, and make sense of that, and communicate with our vendors, which are in different kind of countries, different time zones. So it is truly an effort that spread across the globe with people in every country.
Yeah, the third person was like Otis and our sound design team. Those guys, it's a perfect example of, this is animated television. Like, we have a decent sized budget for a show, for an animated show, but like, you can't compare us to like a budget of an animated movie, or even like a show like Arcane, which is so much bigger than what we're running off of. So with that budget and that quick time that we have to quickly do this, Otis and the sound design team, they, have done films and TV and stuff, but they're delivering. Like, I was asking them, like, what's the most complex sound design you've ever done for any film or TV show? And they're like, your show, because they love Star Trek and they're giving that extra effort to do a gorgeous sound design. So, yeah.
I mean, the soundscape for Star Trek, since it has, around a 57-ish year library of sound effects, I mean, it's got to be difficult because, especially when we're doing and pulling sound effects from different eras. Let's go to Kobayashi, for example. You had a TNG bridge, you had all the different, sound bites from all the different actors and especially with Leonard, from pretty much the course of his career, from TOS, like all the way to Into Darkness, I believe it was, that last shot or beyond. So fans will notice. I mean, you're right. There's the one fan on Twitter that can capture almost every single LCAR screen and every single fuselage bolt. And you gotta love fans like that, right? Because that's almost like an education. But yeah, fans are very particular about that. So I do believe that anyone who kind of like wants to bring their A game to a show like this, they're great at what they do, but then they also give that little bit extra because there's that Star Trek fan in them. Let's bring one big name out here who's probably one of the biggest, and he's behind the scenes too, and that's Aaron. I don't think that Aaron would have been able to pull off All the World's a Stage without him knowing what he knew about Obsession and creating an actual like storyline for the Galileo, a shuttlecraft that we all love now as the Gallows. And then you have the entire backstory of, the red shirt legacy. And then the
one-off character.
The one-off character. Yeah. Right. And then Garavik. And then you have also the double entendre with who are we as fans that we put ourselves out there and study and memorize and put all of our fandom on our sleeves to the point like the Starflight aliens did. I mean, that's brilliant. Right? Yeah,
while Aaron Walke's love and knowledge of Star Trek is, vital to it's in the DNA of the show. The show would not be what it is without that love and that.
We love it because he's like a kid in a candy store. Like, this is his lifelong. I don't know if he ever thought he'd be writing for a Star Trek show. So it's a joy to watch someone write with their heart, and it shows. It shows on the page.
I mean, I think we all feel that as the audience, every single episode we watch. But I wanted to talk about a handful of episodes that the three of you are involved in directly. So you all worked together on Lost and Found's Part 1 and 2, and then you had A Moral Star Part 1 and 2, where you worked with the entire writing team, and then you have Supernova Part 2. So looking at the 20 episodes, you literally worked together and produced the beginning, the middle, and the end. Was that by design so that you were kind of making sure that signature character moments or milestones were hit in the pacing of the show? Is that why those particular episodes were yours as a team to produce and direct?
Well, usually, like as showrunners, you take obviously the pilot's written before the room's there, and you're probably going to be doing the finale. I think our room wrapped around episode 18 when COVID hit, and we had Erin McNamara, who wrote 19, but she was our writer's assistant, so she was around. So we had a lot of great time working with her on 19, and we just want to be there for like the big milestones.
Right.
And then it's a little bit like, you're like, okay, and then this.
But also, we're there. We're there every step of the way. Ben is there every step of the way. We have wonderful animatic directors who help take the script and put it in the animatic form. But then once the animatics are done and stuff, which is stuff that Dan, Ben, and I are constantly reviewing and talking about and helping with. But then, when that's done, it does go into Ben's hands, and Ben's imprint is on everything, as well as Dan and I.
And I think for the I think you do have the bookends, and I mean for sure the pilot was a show, setting up the show stylistically, the tone, the pace. We're talking about directorial, the humor, the kind of performances that we wanted, the lighting, the cut, all of those things, kind of like. And I think it was really important that double episode was chaperoned heavily, particularly, at least for me, visually, it was very important to be directing, that opener, and then kind of like to set, a set of stylistic roles in some ways, that we could then utilize, sometime enhance and use, but at least kind of like stay within that box, so the show would have some visual coherence later on, and have a sense of unity, depending on which director would come in and understand the language of the show. Now the end is also very selfishly, no one. Destroying the Protostar was just not going to be anyone else's job.
That's fair.
That'd be pretty ruthless. That's pretty ruthless to give it to someone else.
I just I could not let that one go. But and in many instances, there's other episodes that I would have loved to completely take over. Over selfishly again. But there's so many aspects of the show that we're constantly reviewing and working on and helping different departments, production, that it becomes really tricky. We sometimes have more than 10 episodes, 12 episodes, 15 episodes in flight at one time, and different stages of production. So it's also keeping track of that, making sure that there is the consistency that is so important when you have serialized storytelling. So
I'm glad you brought up having kind of like the fingerprint on the episodes, because when Ashley and I did and reviewed Lost and Found 1 and 2, one of the things that we made mention of heavily, because it was very prevalent and almost like this was a very deliberate thing. And I'm glad that you mentioned it in the DVD bonus features, because now I feel like, okay, we actually saw something that you deliberately put on screen, was the focus and attention on the eyes. That was so signature in developing this intimate relationship with these characters early on, especially with Dal and Gwen, because everything's being reflected back from their experiences, these little intonations of color or these inflections of how their eyes move. And then probably even more so with Rock, when Rock finally was given the ability to speak in common, and then her eyes became hard monster eyes, but they were the same eyes to these soft, young girl's eyes, which were the same eyes. It just all depends on the context and the content. So when I saw that and we were talking about that, I'm like, oh, we got something right on the podcast. Awesome. we're literally seeing what you're seeing.
Kids' eyes opening up to looking up at the star. I mean, that was all these very simple ideas, eyes full of stars, eyes full of wonder, full of imagination. The Protostar, the canopy of the Protostar, the bridge of the Protostar was that big eye looking into space and just seeing all these colors and all these wonderful unattainable but full of adventure nebulas and planets and worlds out there, and wanting to fly towards it. So it was all about just being open and receive, and I think kids and eyes and reflections and nuances in faces, that close up is what I think we all understand so well.
I got a question for Ben.
Okay, but I just want to wait before a question. I just want to give a shout out to our animators, directors. We got Patrick Krebs, and Jason and CJ. These guys they take that close up, right? They have the beautiful eyes. Ben's got this great idea and show a close up of Dal's eyes in wonder. We're like, yes, it's fantastic. And it's beautifully animated, right? It's colored. It's just gorgeous. But if you look at those shots, super details, it's like the eyes aren't just opening up and big, but there's always like a faint natural, dilation or a movement that you don't need. You don't do that except to emulate like nature and reality of you know what I mean? And so there's such wonderful animation being done in the performances that I think are just some of the best I've personally seen anywhere in animated TV.
You guys remember, like, I think when we're trying to find the style for Prodigy, I think one of the things that just kept coming, and the truth that we wanted to kind of stick to was it needed to feel more natural and grounded, because it is exaggerated by nature because it is animation. We have characters that have volumes and proportions and colors which are fantastical to some extent, and that's part of the charm of animation. But what we wanted to avoid is to have things that were stretching and pulling and bending in ways that just didn't feel natural, and certainly would not fit next to Janeway and Chakotay, and so we wanted to have the ability to the logic of the world to really be sound and to feel like the other shows, the other live action shows. And so that was really important. And so those little details that are very minute and very small, they are also making these characters feel that much more real, although it's not real at all, but they feel slightly more kind of present, I think, in the frame. And I think
that was something that
very early on.
Ben very much did that on his own, but I think coming off of Troll Hunters, one lesson we learned from Guillermo was he just talked about animating imperfect moments, and you'll see it in Pinocchio. And like, there's just it's a beautiful idea of the way characters move and doing things for no reason at all. They just because that's what people do. And I think when you see most animation, you don't see that because they have a plan and they stick to it. And
it costs more money and extra time to do those imperfect moments that don't do anything other than bring the character to life.
But It's like the beating heart of the character. It makes you believe that they're real, and that's when you really start falling for the the
Be careful, Dan. Janeway's peeking over your shoulder.
Yeah.
So she's supervising you.
I wanted to ask Ben, and if this was planned in Lost and Found, when Dal's looking up, in his first failed mission, right at the credits, and he's looking up at the stars. Did you mean to match that when they're in the shuttle in episode 20, looking out?
You mentioned that, Norm.
Yep,
oh yeah, for sure.
Yep.
For sure.
It was the whole please.
I learned that from Norm.
Oh yeah, for sure. Through the glass, you see the stars. You see the stars in his eyes. Yeah, for sure.
When I saw that scene, I'm like, that's it. You're bookending those two particular moments, like Dal's desperation versus Dal's gratitude, like right there in the bookends. I'm just like, and that's why this show has elevated itself in my personal fandom because of details like that. There's something that if you're familiar with the name Richard Taylor from Weta Workshops, he was the production designer for Lord of the Rings. He said that the reason why like our artisans and our craftsmen, they put like the sigil of Gondor on the inside of armor. He said it's not because people are going to see them, it's because they're meant to be there. It gives that added sense of realism to the actors so that you can get the best performances out of them. And every single detail that you put into the show, it informs somebody in the audience that's supposed to be there. That is supposed to inform me about something. There's a hidden secret. There's like a code that we all try to decipher when we're watching these shows. And when I saw those two scenes together, it blew my mind. It absolutely blew my mind. And I can't wait. And I hope people do this in their rewatches where you're looking for things like that. Where you're looking for kind of like these synergies that are working from beginning to end and how this all ties together. I think, and I know that you guys are like, just wait. keep watching.
And just to add to, and that code is something that you look you look for artists and creative people and passionate people that understand that code and have it for themselves. It's not something that you forced upon people. And we've been very lucky, I think, to have incredible artists working on this show that are very hardworking, but also incredibly talented and able to, in their own space, to infuse all of that love for what they do, and that level of detail, which is rare to see in some, kids TV production. And I don't like calling it that because I think it's all the art out there is it feels almost derivative, which it shouldn't. But I think it's kind of like in the limited scope in which we're working, given kind of like the box and the duration of each episode, which is quite tight. And so there are constraints that we have to work with, which sometimes feel, very challenging, but they also are very exciting because we're also, supposed to talk to such a wide array and such a big audience and such a wide array of eyes. We have so many eyes looking at this, and that's really, really exciting to us.
Hi, Char. I think you're up next. I've been stealing a lot of airtime.
Well, how about if we skip or shift gears into something that I think is on everybody's mind at this point, because we've seen season 1 now. It's finally happened. Now we want to talk about merch.
Yeah.
I remember in the previous interviews, one of them, that you mentioned how much COVID wreaked havoc on that whole process, and it's a long, painstaking process to begin with. I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of a status update on where things are at right now. Have things stabilized a little bit? Are things in the pipeline? What can we look forward to? Because season 2 is probably off in the distant horizon, yes?
Yeah, well, I know for the toys, I believe we heard around Easter, I think.
That's the latest. Yeah, the latest April, Easter time, which supposedly is a big time where people buy like action figures and this and that, maybe for Easter baskets or something.
So they tell us after saying it's going to get delayed. But
yeah, we were hoping for Christmas, but
I know an art book is being made. I think a few art books are being made.
Well, that's the plan. Again,
yeah, the pipeline issue of even just getting paper for books and stuff is hard.
I think it's a hard push. Like if you're like Stranger Things and you came out on a Netflix and it's bombastic numbers and stuff, okay, yeah, they start hustling, right? And people are working hard at getting stuff done, but it's still like, we just have one season out. And it's just, and it
Paramount
came out
Plus
kind
had just come out. Yeah, they were like, it's a toy on Paramount. It's a kids show on Paramount Plus, and everyone's a little anxious of like, okay, you don't want to fill the toy shelves with all this stuff and then have, the people not come out. So it's for shows like this, it's always a slow build.
It's a slow build. Everything, yeah.
So we just need to be more patient, is what you're saying.
I know. Trust me, and we're being just as patient as well. We're right with you. We're chomping.
And we have seen things which are very exciting.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the
I don't know.
No restriction on our part. You guys can talk about whatever you want, making sure that you're not obviously violating your own NDAs. So
there's some good stuff.
So I've seen
the toys are beautiful. We've held the toys in our hands, and they're every single toy.
Yeah. Playmates.
Like I remember Kevin and I were a little bit worried at first. We're like, okay, or is it going to get up to the levels of what we want? And they have. The toys are.
Yeah, Playmates is awesome. Yeah.
Well, I hope that they sell well because the numbers are going to hopefully like give us, say, like Zero and Zero's new body, which was amazing, right? Zero's Starfleet armor. There were a couple things I saw that I wouldn't say they were confusing, but the merchandisers out there do love the title of Supernova. So there's Supernova, the video game that's on Switch and a couple other platforms. There's a book that I think is a tie into that video game. And then of course there's the finale of the 2-part finale. So Supernova and Prodigy are kind of synonymous right now in the branding.
Yes.
And of course we're going to get Murph 1 and 2. Hopefully we'll get the second Murph because we love toddler Murph. And
they do.
It's by design, like we're trying to we want different action figures. I want the different versions of Murph or the different versions of Zero or Dow in his winter clothing, uniform versus his. Yeah.
And we all, and we're talking also about our book, which we're all very keen to do. And particularly for Murph, probably a full chapter on Murph, we've done about 250 designs for Murph, which was absolutely impossible to lock, and then end up on the simplest thing ever. But it's and I think those are big swings, right? Changing this character mid-season. Ooh, it was for a couple of episodes. We're like, what have we done?
I think that was the most. I think this was the most contentious. The Murph design was the most contentious between Ben and us, and it was like no one knew. Like our early designs were horrible. When I say we, it's like our early, but what we said we wanted was not good.
It's really difficult. A lot of this, also because of the material and what we were kind of like wanting, Murph to be made out of. A lot of designs end up being actually quite gross and quite repulsive and not very cute at all. And so it was just really tricky to find the right balance between movement, design, material, and no, it worked out okay. It worked out okay.
I think you did a good job.
When Heather Caden's like, why don't we just make him cute? And we're like okay, right.
He is cute. Both iterations. All the detail that you were mentioning in the animation and trying to make it real. I was thinking about Murph the whole time you guys were talking about that, because he's the one character who has the exaggeration where he can flip around and go into space and stretch himself and all sorts of cool stuff.
Yeah. It really is a balance. That was just a choice to, Murph really was the last character, put into our show, and it was for the kids because we were worried we didn't have enough for the younger ones. And then the stretching and all that, I mean, that it's a tough balance. We're really trying to balance. Our intent was a show that we're going to have adults and kids like, and how are we going to do that? And so that's why we kind of had fun.
I think it's also credits to the script and the writers on the show. Is it never, like, none of the humor or the physical comedy or none of that stuff is ever undercutting the dramatization or the flow of the story itself or reducing character moments. It's never there to end the dramatic scene.
Well, that was pretty
adorable.
We kept. I know that was pushing it. That was getting a little like cartoony, but we're like, but we always laughed.
But it was also funny.
It becomes so part of the character that at some point you accept it.
Yeah. But, I mean, right after he did that, Dreadnought did something where I think the collective audience just like held their breath. They're like, did we finally see Murph actually get hurt this time? He was frozen. I was like, oh my God, Murph! And he rolled the dice on this character. Yeah, but and the adults are the ones that are being precious about Murph more than the kids, which is hilarious, right?
Yeah.
We have a few more minutes here, and just a couple of things to maybe start wrapping things up and thinking about what you can let us in on maybe on season 2. So during the entire process, every process is a growth period. We learn things, as creators, and we try and incorporate, things that can improve our work from season to season, from production to production. And I'm not exactly sure where you guys are with season 2, but have you learned, say, a lesson or two that you could probably share with us about season 1 that would help you improve, if that's possible, like improve what you're doing with season 2 from maybe like production standpoint, or being able to put in those nuances that you like, or if there's things about characters that you said, we could have done that just a slightly bit better, because if you do, it's just going to take up the quality of our production exponentially. Just little things, but the little details are the things that matter the most.
Well, what's hard to say up front here is that, we're so far down the line with season 2 already. We finished writing that a long time ago. I don't know how many months ago it was. What is it, 8?
Actually, I think when I interviewed you the second time, you guys were done writing, and that was like an 8-month break between 10 and 11.
Yeah, and so season 1 wasn't even out yet. So there was very little to go off of, to know what was working or what's not. So I think even season 2, what you're seeing in season 1, season 2, it's us following our guts still, all of us, in what we were doing in season 1. you know.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
There's technical things like Ben can.
There's technical things that we do. There's production structure that we do. I mean, those are very boring.
Exciting, yeah. Pipeline.
Very, very boring.
Making things smoother, not so hard on us.
As you get into the groove of a show like this, but and you really roll, as Ken was saying, you roll from one season to the next, and therefore, you readjust and reshape, and some artists move around, and those are the things that allow for the production to function a little bit better. But I mean, it's I think that the quality or the ambition and of the show is only growing really with time, right?
Yeah.
So you end up making life a little bit harder regardless. So it's good. It readjusts. It's a balance.
But one thing that we took away, as we approached season 2 was we knew what we had written and what we were producing of season 1 at that time. Maybe it hadn't been out, but we knew what we were doing there. So with season 2, Dan and I wanted to make sure that season 2 didn't feel like, it's the exact same thing. Like, I hate it when the seasons blur together and you have no idea what season was which, and it was all kind of one and the same.
Another sacrifice in the finale. Like, no.
Yeah.
Always trying to reinvent. Yeah.
Yeah. So we tried to really keep the DNA of season 1, but really what's the next chapter? What's going to feel like, when I apologize for making this comparison to Star Wars, God forbid. But when you watched Empire Strikes Back, I remembered that well because it was on Hoth and it had these different aspects to it that was very different from Star Wars, or A New Hope, right? Mm-hmm. And so we definitely wanted to make sure that season 2 has its own flavor.
We're on a snow planet. Yeah.
Well, we did a snow planet. So
Darth Vader makes an appearance. Yeah.
Right. Giant walking machines, things like that.
I think it's also
we're gonna ruin everything that you.
Yeah. The kids kind of keep growing, and their experiences and their place within the group might change, might not change. Might grow and solidify, and all of that. And I think that's the good stuff, really. It's despite the kind of the wells and the experiences and the challenges and all of that, it's just the growth keeps going, and I think that's what's so wonderful about TV shows and the ability to have so many stab at the characterization and just really capture something that is ever changing. And kids are great for that. They're perfect for that.
I think that leads right into your next question, Char. That's perfect.
It is. Looking even further beyond season 2, do you all have a vision for how long you want this show to last?
Oh, of course. I mean, and it's all up to the fans if the people show up and watch it, right? But we're all, our heads are always in the clouds here with okay, we want to do an animated movie, I would love for this show to keep going for many, many seasons, right? And then just sort of like what they did with Next Generation, they had the show and then they started to spin off and do the features, right? And so to be able to have the show and then to have a feature would be amazing. Not only just an animated feature, but you could do a live action feature, would be absolutely stunning. So we have lofty ambitions.
That's phase 1. Yeah. Phase 2.
Okay. And it's always funny. It's if you ever
park rides.
Ramsey Nato, who's the head of animation, we absolutely adore her. She's the head of animation for now all of Paramount and Nickelodeon and stuff. And so whenever we sit down with her, and we're always asking about. Or she'll bring up maybe a season 3 or talking about possibilities, and we're season 3 and season 4, and we have an idea for the movie, and she's like, whoa, one thing at a time. So know that
we're always going to push.
We're pushing as hard as we can. We're and again, and they everyone, the network and the studios have been so supportive, so wonderful. They love our show. Notes are so minimal, the trust that they have in all of us is so great. And I think the future of our series, it really rests in viewership. If the viewers are there, the show will keep going. But if the viewership isn't there, the numbers aren't there, it's going to be hard to convince the studio.
I'd have to think that after a really stellar, seriously, the best Star Trek first season ever, I'm just going to say it. is if you keep producing at that level, and I don't even know how you set the bar that high, but you did, the audience will continue to watch because it's brilliant. It's heartfelt. You get so many things right that previous Star Trek did. Like, I feel Voyager walked so Prodigy could fly, that kind of a thing. And if you just keep doing what you're doing, we've got a lot of good Trek to look forward to. I'm very excited about that.
And obviously the awards shows, they've taken notice. Can we talk a little bit more about like the Emmy nomination and the Emmy win, for Prodigy? And does that give you a little bit more negotiating power when it comes to trying to produce and push a little bit more of what you want to do with the network?
I think it helps, but it's a business. They're going to look at the numbers. That's what's going to really push them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it helps. It helps. And I think we just gotta thank you for those kind words, Char. And we're so happy and proud that the Star Trek community is loving the show and stuff, but we have to our show can't just rest on them. Like, we need children out there who aren't in Star Trek households, who don't know anything about Star Trek. How do they find this show? And, because, we feel like when people find it, they love it.
So this is a plea to the fans. Everybody have one more kid. Start having kids, and then start going to permanent place.
Prodigy is that perfect gateway to somebody who knows absolutely nothing about Star Trek, and they can start watching Star Trek with somebody who's an expert fan. It's very versatile that way.
Yeah, I think the one thing that Rod really did help and his contribution as an idea to the podcast was for us to get those voicemails from the kids. Cause from say Dietrich and Rook and Sarah, like Dietrich being 4 and probably having one of the most profound responses at the end of Supernova 2 it brought me to tears. I'm like, a 4-year-old is seeing the message. And I'm like, that's what this is for. And I really do thank Rod a lot for that. I just want to ask, do you guys have any final parting thoughts for our listeners, aside from having children? And that's a good piece of advice, but I'm not sure if everyone's on board with that.
Is that the takeaway?
It's a good one.
Have more kids. Watch Star Trek.
Parting thoughts. Do you guys have anything?
I'm excited for season 2. It's like as excited as I was for people to watch season 1. I think internally our team is like, wait for season 2. Like I think we all love the cast and crew, and we love, these characters, and it's a totally different adventure. I mean, I guess what we can tease is we talk about like when Kevin and I kind of break down a season, we try to boil it down to like, well, what is this season? And we're like, season 1 is about a bunch. I mean, you could reduce it down to about a bunch of kids who steal a ship. Mm-hmm. And go, season 2, we want to see these kids earn a ship. So that's
the next step.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I don't know, like my parting thing is just, thank you to everyone who's watched it and enjoyed it, because, we set off to make something that we didn't want it to be disposable television. That's what a lot of entertainment that kids have today is, very disposable. And when I grew up, there are certain movies and things that stuck with me, like E.T., let's say. E.T. stuck with me. Goonies stuck with me and has molded me. And I have an affinity. It's a part of my childhood, right? And I think we set off to make a show that could become a part of someone's childhood. I can't wait and hope that some of these kids, they'll grow up, or they'll, and I'll talk to them and they're 20 something. And then to say that this show was their childhood. I mean, I would love that. I'd be so proud.
Ben, any last words?
We're deep making season 2. We're all incredibly excited about it. And the fans have been absolutely incredible. The response have been so joyful to watch and to take part in. And so keep having these conversations between new fan and old fan, young and old. I mean, that was the reason why we made the show, I think, is to open up as many conversations about all of those different ideas and concepts, the old and the new, animation, live action, all of those things are music to our ears, and we love it. So as much as we can have all these conversations, I think that's the way to spread not just the word about the show, but about some of these future ideas and revisiting those concepts, diversity, inclusion, all of these good stuff. So I think that's if that's what Prodigy becomes, and for its run, at least up to now, it is all we hoped for, I think.
Beautifully said. If you don't mind me asking, if you'd like to share where your fans of Prodigy or your work, Dan and Kevin also work, and your fans find you on social media.
I think we're just at Twitter at Brothers Hageman.
All righty. And Ben, yourself?
I have an Instagram account where you can see some pretty frames from Prodigy now and then. I think it's ben.hibon.
Okay. Cool. Very good. Very good. Thank you all for being here. It's always a pleasure to have you all on. Ben, thank you for being here for your first time, and hopefully it's not your last time. We would love to have you back, obviously, to talk about season 2. Dan, Kevin, always a pleasure having you here. And on behalf of Mission Log Prodigy and the Roddenberry Podcast Network, thank you for being with us on this episode. And I am sure that I can speak for Shar, for Ashley, for everyone here at Mission Log Prodigy, the podcast, that we look forward to the return of Star Trek Prodigy Season 2 in 2023. Well, that was fun.
Just a little.
Just a little. So any final thoughts, Shar, on what Dan or Kevin or Ben had to say? Was there anything that stood out to you in particular, especially with their final thoughts, because their final thoughts were pretty insightful?
They were, but you know what I really dug, because I'm such a behind the scenes junkie, was talking about the process of how the show is put together. That's something that the more I learn about it, the more curious I get. So the fact that they were willing to delve into really incredible detail about that, it just made me so happy. How about you?
I liked, it wasn't really too much of a spoiler, as much as I don't want it to be spoiled, but even what Dan said about, the season 2, the kids are going to be earning a starship as opposed to stealing a starship. I like that, but they kind of were earning the starship too in season 1. So it's not really quite as much of a spoiler. And maybe that's a good thing.
It's really not. No. I mean, the kids are going to keep growing. They must continue to change and thrive. And that's not a bad thing.
Earn's a good word, though. It'll be interesting to see how they earn it and who they earn it with.
Well, Admiral Janeway is going to work them hard.
Right.
They will be earning it through her, I'm sure. But then you know what? Season 1, if that was any indication, they're going to subvert every expectation we have along the way. So I'm very excited about that.
Yep. And so am I. And I'm excited for, them to come back on the show, all of them, Dan, Kevin, and Ben, and even more people that have worked on Prodigy in the weeks and months to come, as we're waiting for season 2 to be back, on our airwaves, hopefully sometime in the fall of 23.
We can hope so. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm just waiting for the announcement, trying to be really, really, really patient about it, but I don't know. In the meantime, I'm so glad that we are going to do things in the interim. However, we have reached the end of this show. So thank you, everybody, for joining us here on Mission Log Prodigy. If you enjoyed the show, please make sure you like and subscribe and share and do all of the things. Make sure you're looking at the Prodigy playlist on the Roddenberry Entertainment YouTube channel. You can find all of our past episodes on there. Mission Log Prodigy is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment, production and technical direction by Earl Green. Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is at missionlogpodcast.com. And if you would like to support Mission Log directly, and you really should, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog.
So thank you, everyone, for taking the time to be with us. And even though we're in between seasons, rest assured that Shar and I are working on plans to bring you some fantastic content between now and then. Prodigy Season 2 will probably be here before we know it. Let's hope. And like Shar says, make sure to subscribe to all the channels so that you are informed when that new content arrives. Thank you for listening, and go boldly and go fast.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.